Thank you for tuning in to the World Builders Anvil, episode 288. Why you should use more one-dimensional characters?
Part 2.
Jeff, is this copyright?
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, my name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And multidimensional, I am Michael Miller.
Yes, as any good sidekick should be multidimensional.
Oh, really? Really? Is that what I am? A multidimensional sidekick. Is that what I am? It's good to know my place. I did not realize. I have always thought that there was a partnership.
Sure. Like Batman and Robin. I'm just
Yeah, I know. Yeah. As long as I'm Batman. So, this past week was weird for me because I saw this video and I had not realized that we didn't have an episode go up this week.
I realized when I was editing the episode for next week, and I realized it should have been for this week. It's just been very hectic, and I was going to just like push it out on, I think it was Tuesday when I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one of those things, it was like, you know what? I've not had a week off of this since 2015.
More than fair.
So I'm like, you know what? We're a little behind in recording. It's just not going to happen. There's too much other stuff going on. So, but there was good news on the book front. I don't know if you saw that part of the video.
I watched the video, but the good news on the book front was not eminently clear to me. Is it that you have an editor, a different editor now? Is that it?
Is essentially the editing situation squared away.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now in not my proof edits, but my final edits before the book layout and the book cover is being designed, or I'm picking out a book cover designer. I have the cover art, but I need the actual book cover, all of the title and stuff.
Text and everything.
There. Yeah.
Are you self-publishing or do you have a publisher?
It will be self-published, at least initially. If someone wants to pick up and do all the hard work later on, I'll let them. But I just figure I don't want to start out that way because I want to do it the way I want to do it, which is probably wrong. But
but correct me if I'm wrong. If you self-publish, all the money goes to you at that point, right?
Well, no, because you still have to pay the ad and the people who do the book design and the interior layout.
Well, no, but you pay them up front, no? Or do they get a cut of the book?
You pay them up front, typically. Sometimes I guess you could have a royalty deal if you wanted to. I do not. I will obviously lose money to if someone buys a hardcover book, a lot of the money will go to, or a softcover book, not hardcover, will go to whoever's printing it. And obviously Amazon or whoever is selling the website will take a cut. It'll be available on my website as well too, obviously, to help drive.
I would imagine you'd make more money on a digital version, right?
Yes, I would make more money on a digital version.
Okay.
But it's one of those things where strangely not a lot. Obviously, I think the print cost is like around $4. So
how much?
About $4 a book for strictly getting it printed.
Okay.
And I could do cheaper than that, but I want it to be like an actual decent softbound book, so it'll have a better spine and decent paper.
You don't want it to disintegrate when people try to pick it up and start reading it?
Yeah, no. Well, it depends. If I start getting panned, I might switch the paper out to flash paper. But
ooh, no one's liking this. Let's cut the budget. cut the material budget. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I think people will get it. The people who it's intended for, people who love to use their imaginations when they read, I think will really.
So, I'm trying to think of what interesting thing. Can I share some personal stuff from it? Just because I haven't.
If you want to.
Yeah, except for my family, I haven't been able to talk about this much. Things with my father are getting a little difficult. He has fallen a bunch of times, and he's in an assisted living facility. And he has fallen a bunch of times. The other day, he fell like on his face. And I'm shocked he didn't break his nose because he had like a pseudo black eye, a big cut on the bridge of his nose. He broke his toe the other day because he fell. So he's getting banged up. He had to go to the hospital. He has dementia now. That's official. And the facility washes his clothing. And he had been messing around with his cell phone so much that my brother's like, okay, forget the cell phone. We're getting you a more simple cell phone, because he would lock himself out of it, and like the smartphone was getting to be too complicated for him. So first we went from a Droid to an iPhone, and he was like, Droid is so complicated, so we got him the iPhone. And then he's like, I hate the iPhone. I wish I had the Droid. So then we went to an old school like drug dealer flip phone. And he would well, they're kind of chic, you know, they're kind of like
retro,
trendy retro chic. Yeah. So
it's harder to track you if you use them.
Exactly. So he had that, and he still would call my brother. And in every stage of this process, he would call my brother incessantly asking for guidance to use the device.
Wow.
With the Droid, it was all the time. With the iPhone, it was all the time. I'd come over and he'd be like, oh, set this on my phone, or fix this on my phone, or make this stupid thing work. I can't make a phone call, or blah, 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 blah. So finally my brother's like, all right, forget this. Get him a flip phone. So we got him a flip phone. The other day he put it through the laundry. They do his laundry there. I don't know. I can only assume there's so much laundry to be done. They're not going through every article of clothing. They're just heaps, like bags, like heaps and bags of dirty laundry, and dumping into a huge, like the kind of huge laundry machines you would see at like a hotel. That's my assumption. I don't know. I haven't seen their laundry. But anyway, so the phone went through the laundry, and that ruined the phone. My brother gave him another flip phone. A day later, that one went through the laundry.
Jeez.
So my brother's like, I'm not getting him another phone. And it has become this whole big thing. And so there's been a lot of stress regarding caring for my father, making sure that he's safe, making sure that he's healthy, and trying to take care of his communication needs. And my sister just moved to North Carolina last week.
Yeah.
And she is the medical power of attorney for my father. So she's been the one to be right in the thick of it for a lot of this. But with her now in North Carolina, it's going to be a little more stuff's going to fall on me. A little more stuff's going to fall on me. A little more stuff's going to fall on my brother, because she's not, in the immediate vicinity. So these past couple of weeks have been.
But still, she's doing the right thing. If she's ready to move money, you got to do it. So
her move was a financial decision, a career decision, but also very much a personal decision. I think she's gotten what she was going to get out of Connecticut, and she's ready to branch out and, you got to
make those calls for your family sometimes.
Yeah. Be somewhere else. I mean, it was definitely
it was extra tough with your father being ill, but I mean, you got to do what's right for you.
Honestly, I don't know, because I'm very happy for her, because she has taken on so much with my father. Like, she has been doing the lion's share of the work with him. So she has been so stressed out, and there's just so much extra stuff dealing with him. And it's just been really hard on her. So I'm very happy for her. I'm glad that she has moved down south, so that she is not in the proximity of being able to take on the extra stress. You know what I mean? Because she would take it on. If she was. Now she can't. Yeah. So I think it's better for her. You know what I mean?
Well, luck with that one. That's a tough situation to be in, having a sick parent. And dementia is one of those things that frightens me horribly. So.
Oh, I've told my wife already. If I get to the point where I'm just totally out of it, like I'm not there anymore. I'm like, let me wander in front of a bus. I'm like, take me out and let me walk off a cliff. Just let it happen. Like, you got my permission. I'll put it in writing. I mean,
I don't know if that's assisted at that point. So.
My bit is, if I'm still there some days, like if I got like a 50% ratio going, then yeah, let me hang out. I'll have days where I'm goofy as whatever, and I'll have days where I'm with it. My dad's condition is unique in that he's also lifelong mentally ill. I think, have I mentioned this on the show before?
I'm not sure if you've mentioned on the show before. I don't remember.
So with him being mentally ill, it's tricky because some of the symptoms of his mental illness are similar, if not identical, to some of the dementia symptoms. This is coupled with COPD, Parkinson's. So he's got a lot health-wise going.
Chronic issue.
Yeah, he's in bad condition. But the real trick of it is the Parkinson's medication is in direct opposition to his antipsychotics, multiple. He's on like 4 heavy-duty mental stability medications, and they are in direct opposition to the Parkinson's medications. So they can only treat the Parkinson's so much without affecting his mental stability treatment. So it's either let the Parkinson's mess with him physically, or let his brain mess with him mentally. So it's a very tricky balancing act, and what I have been pushing for, and I think I need to push a little harder for, is that I think, because his body's in such bad shape as it is, like he falls all the time, he's in a wheelchair now, like he can walk, like he'll get up and walk, but it's a roll of the dice whether or not he's going to make it across the room without tripping or stumbling or falling or needing to grab something, and he's too stubborn to listen to me or the nurses and be like, you have to ask for help. Like you literally cannot get up and walk across the room. You can't do that. You have to get help. But he'll forget that because he has dementia. He'll forget that because he's mentally ill. You know what I mean? So you can tell him till you're blue in the face, Dad, you can't get up and go pee by yourself. You have to use the walker, or you have to get in the wheelchair, or you have to go hit the button and have someone come in the room and help you into the wheelchair so you can go to the bathroom. But because he's like, no, I feel okay to stand, I'm going to stand and walk, and he'll get up and he'll walk and then he'll fall. You know what I mean? So the thing that I think I'm going to have to push for at some point is like, look, his body's a mess. Let him have his mind. Let's not let him be anxious. Let's not let him have auditory or visual hallucinations. Like, let's keep him as much of him as he can be for as long as he can. Yeah. Because eventually it's going to get to the point where he's just a mess mentally and physically. I mean, we had to cut a little there, guys. Sorry about that. There was an ambulance driving by my apartment. So, but the long and the short of it is, like, there's been, family stress. There's been a bit of work stress. So I have been crazy busy. I haven't played Destiny in like 3 weeks. It's been, good God, it's been hard. It's been hard. It's important. What's funny too, because there's a couple glitches going on right now, and I know they're going to hotfix them soon, and I want to take advantage of them while I can, but I haven't been able to play. Like last Saturday, which was like 6 days ago, they still had not hotfixed it. But that's a long time to give them to fix this particular problem, because I don't think it'll be a difficult problem for them to correct. So I want to try to get on it within the next 3 days, at least, if not tonight after we're done, to try to take advantage of it. So anyway, but today we are talking about single dimensions. We're talking about dots today.
Most people in life are not very one-dimensional. Even people who are, the more you get to know them, you get to see the intricacies of them. I think one of the mistakes I see a lot is people, it's in the vein of making the works deeper and have many more dimensions to them, that people, sometimes important characters have to be completely complex. And there's an argument for that, but that's a different show. Right now, I want to make the argument towards more one-dimensional characters, and it can even help make your book more multidimensional because of them, or your games. And
now I want to, and you probably have it here in the show notes, but since you just sent them to me, I haven't read them yet. I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase my question. How would you describe / define a one-dimensional character versus a character with a single track mind? Because I would say that there are characters that have one track focus that are one dimensional, and some that are not. But I think that quality might fall into this discussion real well. And I don't want to deviate too far if it doesn't. But if it does, I totally want to lean into it. So you tell me.
I think a single, like a single focus character, I think a lot of it can be one dimensional. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. Part of it is in the presentation. kind of, are getting a lot into the mindset, there might be a lot of conflicts, but ultimately there's this one thing that keeps, guiding them. To an outside person, it might appear one-dimensional. People reading the book, it might or might not, depending upon how you present it. But someone who's one-dimensional could be that they're always distractible. Whereas just the opposite, where they're going in a million directions. Anytime they zig, they're going to zag the next move. And that might appear to be multidimensional, but it's really one-dimensional. You're always going in the opposite direction they seem to be going, and it's just sort of a thread for the character. And one thing I want to say is, this is really not a good idea for a main character. Even though I think, you got very important characters, and I'll talk about one here in a bit, but who can be one-dimensional and it really works. And sometimes it might not work if you make it a complex character.
I'm reminded of the book Luminous. The main bad evil character in that book, I would not call one-dimensional. I would definitely call that character of a singular task. That character has a defined task and goal that they are shooting for throughout the book. And throughout the book, you may think that the character is one-dimensional, but you get some hooks late in the book that totally stack layers upon what this character is actually about and what's actually going on with this character. And you get to learn about this character in a way. So it's one of these things.
I actually thought Avengers did a very good job of that with Thanos.
Absolutely. I totally agree. That's another great thing. You might say, okay, well, this character's power hungry. This character's just a bad guy. But when you start learning about motivations and where it comes from,
the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah. But I don't want to deviate too far, because that is definitely for another show. And if we're going to stick to one dimension, I want to get to that. But what you just said is something that I might not disagree with. Well, maybe not in a book, but in a movie. There are some great movie characters that are the main characters that are one-dimensional.
Which they can be. I think it's harder, especially in books, but
because they're longer, I guess.
Because they're longer form, spend more time with it.
Exactly.
Movies and television shows, I think it can even become a problem the longer it goes on. Movies, I think it could work the best in. But, some of the traits you want to avoid when making a one-dimensional character.
Okay.
Adding in flaws or traits that suck. So you have a likable character, but then there's just something about them that is irritating. That would add another dimension to the characters. Thing is, unless they're all suck, which might be boring or irritating for a character, depending on how often they're in the book. Flaws that suck.
Well, give me an example. Do you mean what would be a flaw that sucks? Are you talking about something that just is not creative or not entertaining?
Or irritating, like James Bond with "I like my martini shaken but not stirred." That's sort of to me an irritating. Whether or not they really suck, I guess is. I think if you ask most bartenders, they would say that is ridiculous. There's a reason they're shaked. But the thing was, it was just sort of like a quirk of the character that would show up, that helped make the character who he was, but unfortunately helped make him more dimensional than he would otherwise be. Typically, multidimensional characters get caught up a lot in shades of gray, and typically one-dimensional characters don't. Things are right or wrong, and there's nothing in between.
Would you call Rorschach a one-dimensional character?
Rorschach, and what? That's not ringing a bell right now outside of the test.
Really?
I don't remember.
The Watchmen? Did you ever read The Watchmen?
No.
You never read The Watchmen?
I've never read The Watchmen, no.
Oh, Jeff, you have homework.
I believe that came out in the early 90s.
It did.
That's when I was overseas and I had access to no popular media.
It's been on the bestsellers lists for forever.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm pretty sure.
That's history. It's history.
I'm pretty sure I have a copy of it here somewhere if I do.
Sort of like me bringing down the Iron Curtain. It's all history at this point.
There's a character. All right, I'll give you. Oh gosh, who would be a good comparison? The Punisher is almost like a Punisher Batman. And I'm sure there's a couple of people cringing at those comparisons. Rorschach is a non-powered street level vigilante who is extremely violent, but not without provocation. Okay. And he is so black and white about what's right and wrong. He is so black and white about it. But there definitely is more layers to him. Like, I would call him a multi-layered character, but
yeah, there can be a lot of times it's about going to a character. The more time you spend with the character, the harder it is to keep dimensional. They might be single purposed, but keeping them one dimensional becomes difficult. Because the thing is, they always have to respond the way you expect them to. And he
does.
The third thing is to avoid
other than being creative. He is a creative character in what he does, but he does. Once you understand the character, you know how he's going to respond generally.
My big argument for this is the Willy Wonka movies, or characters from the movies. You have
all of the children. All of the children.
No. The Willy Wonkas from the original movie with Gene Wilder, and the Willy Wonka from the modern movie, I think by Johnny Depp.
Yes.
Johnny Depp's character was much more complex and nuanced, and I would argue bad and boring, where Gene Wilder's was a one-dimensional character.
You think so?
Oh, yes. He was maybe a bit crazy, but he was very one-dimensional.
All right, I need to hear some justification.
He was all about finding a replacement who would do things the way he, and that was it. There was no nuance. There was no gray. There was bad children. There were good children, but it was all from this one dimension of finding a replacement to run his factory the way he does.
But see, that sounds more like single-mindedness or single-tasked than.
But my point was, there was no nuances. There were no contradictions. There was no questioning himself. It was all just one direction, one way.
Okay.
He's single-minded and one-dimensional, but you don't have to be.
Okay.
There was no layers or complexities to his character. Outside of
I don't know that I agree with that.
You're wrong, but that's okay.
I can't speak to the Johnny Depp version. I've probably only seen parts of that movie in different sittings. I've never sat through that whole movie. But the old one I've seen a number of times, of course. And I'm thinking of a few different specific scenes that give you insights into the character a little more so. Like
they explained why he was the way he was, but there was only one version of him. You might think, even with him sitting at the desk, the only thing you can say is maybe a second dimension to him would be his over-the-top behavior around an audience.
Well, that's definitely one.
But
and a lot of people think that, well, right. That's what I'm saying.
So it's really not.
That's the character, but that's not the character. I would say Willy Wonka was most real when he was in the elevator at the end.
Yes, but once again, he was showing him behind his curtain.
Well,
so
right.
It was still a performer.
You don't think that's another layer? You don't think that's another?
No.
To be all right. To be one thing, but present yourself differently. You don't think that adds a second dimension?
No. You could argue it is, but you're wrong, because one dimension is he was a performer, and performers aren't always on stage. So his character was always performing, and even part of that scene, it was him showing and revealing everything about what the kid had got, because he did it his way. But his way is a showman way, and that's why it's one-dimensional. So even in that scene where they're flying off through the roof and over the town, and he's showing him everything, it's still him showing. It's still him performing. It's just a different show at that point.
I don't know if I agree with you. What? Let's keep going.
Okay.
When They Work is the next thing you have written here.
So here are some examples.
Actually, finish what you wrote here. What you wrote here is Wonka was so much better than Wonka. What does that mean?
And that was the Gene Wilder version was so much better than the Johnny Depp version.
Gotcha. Okay.
And now, when they work, this is when I think they work really well. Any one-off character should be one-dimensional in a book. You don't want to spend the time and effort developing someone in the book. Usually, if they're there for a scene, like if you have a guard who gets killed by your James character, you probably don't want to spend a lot of time. It depends on your themes and narrative goals, but in general, you don't want to develop the guard that gets taken out by James Bond. He's just there for a thing. You might do something to show that he's a person, but that's all a one-note character, and that's all he is. There's no sub-archetypes.
It's weird because I've got this show that I was watching. Sarah and I might have to get back to it. It's I want to say it's out of the UK. It's basically a Walking Dead kind of show, and they spend like half an episode on this one character, and then they out of nowhere kill the character. And I think they're trying to pull a Game of Thrones to get you to get attached to somebody and then kill them to show you that all bets are off. Like nobody is safe.
Well,
I don't know.
Kind of went back on that, but yeah,
I don't know if they were doing that on purpose. I don't know if that was their intention, or I don't know what their intention was with doing that. But they did do that in a way where it was like, okay, you were really you got a backstory on this character and all the characters that character was with. It was like a trio of characters for a little while there. And then they out of nowhere straight killed this character in a really graphic way. That was actually pretty
well. Awesome. And sometimes when it comes to like TV, especially, that kind of thing I think happens sometimes because of contracts or the actors. The biggest one coming to my mind was if you'd watch Abby, and I did about only half pay attention. It was really well done. It just isn't really my era. But
your audio is cutting out all the time. So I believe you're talking about Downton Abbey. Is that what you said?
Downton Abbey, and the main character, for a while, he was set up to take control of the estate when the father passed. He was going to inherit everything. And after I don't know how many.
So you're going to spoil the heck out of the show, is what you're
spoil the heck out of the show because the character died off. In a car wreck at the end of the season, but it was because he wanted to go on to do other things, and he was sick of doing the series. Really, even the writers were kind of thrown for a loop because now they had to repair this. He was central to their story going forward, and now they remove him out and figure out now how are we going to get there. That's a different kind of issue. But sometimes
I've seen it. They've done that in a bunch of shows.
You might want to run off character because you want to show how villainous your murdering villain is. By killing this very innocent person. You might want to develop a character to to show like their skills and prove how competent your hero is for being able to overcome them at the beginning of the story to establish the character is effective. So there are reasons you might want to go against it, but in general, don't spend too much time developing your one-off characters unless it's for a specific narrative reason. The other thing is, especially for characters like who are your supporting cast, not your one-off characters, it's okay and to use it within reason. Not all of your characters should do this, but you want to show how your main character or your antagonist or protagonist are actually, show off some of their traits. Because you have this one-note character around them. It's like you have a paladin in the party to show how devious your rogue is. Think about in gaming terms there. But, it's like, if the main character is a rogue and you want to show him off to be more roguish, and you see this a lot in television campy fantasy where there'll be a bit of a rogue who's the main character, and then you have a goody character, and that's their job is to be goody two shoes. But that way they can point out to the audience every time this person is being devilish. But those are circumstances where I think one note characters work. You can do it for a period of time, but it's just because of the way you're presenting them. Later on, you might decide to start adding in nuance and character. But like, let's say you have a trilogy, in the first book, the villain looks just like, or as you talk about in Luminous with Dawn's book, for a huge stretch, you're left thinking that this is a one-dimensional character.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you start, for whatever reason you need, you can start adding in later on. So for a period of time, even for a main character, but you can either develop them to give them nuance, or you can sit there and start revealing the nuance. Maybe they're being quizzed about decisions in the past, to start developing and showing that there's actually a lot of complexity. Be a simple thing like a character like the Punisher, it'd be very easy to make one note. But after several decades of comic books, it becomes hard to leave it that way, because each writer wants to leave their mark on the character.
Yeah. What just went into my brain? Something you just said Punisher, and it got me off of what I was thinking. I was sitting there thinking about something. I was thinking about one-dimensional villains Darth Vader. So take a look at Darth Vader before they released anything else. Before it was just Star Wars, and then Empire, and then Jedi. Mm-hmm. In that era, Darth Vader was very much one-dimensional. He was
Star Wars, you mean?
He was just the evil. In A New Hope, he was just the evil bad guy. In Empire, he was just the evil bad guy. You started to get a little bit in Empire, but then in Jedi is when you're finally like, oh, there's a person behind there. There's a backstory behind there. There's more going on to him. I didn't like what they...
Something about Han Solo in A New Hope. He was very one-dimensional.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they developed him more, especially in Empire, to build up taking him away from us. But the thing was, he was a great, because his roguishness, it was just the opposite of what I was saying, how goody two-shoes Luke was. Leia was a multi-dimensional character because she was a goody two-shoes, but she was practical.
Yes.
It was about achieving the goal of defeating the Empire, and she knew sometimes she had to bend rules. And I at least got that flavor of Hope, and much more so as it went on. But it was very much a one-dimensional character. Luke wasn't really, because he started. He might have even been one-dimensional in A New Hope. I'm not sure.
I would say he was one-dimensional in A New Hope. In A New Hope, what is A New Hope is meant to be Luke's hero's journey.
Yep.
That's what they didn't know if they were going to get a second movie, but so it was meant to be a closed tale. A hero's journey. It's got all the classic.
Because you could say blowing up the Death Star was the Empire defeated. And then you could bring it back and go, okay, wait, there's this bigger thing and bigger thing. But I think those are both good examples of using a one-dimensional character for a time. So the thing is, you spin with the characters, the harder it is to keep them that way. A show, I think it was called Dark Matter. It was a sci-fi show. It was decent. They had a character who, if you ask me, and I don't remember what his name was, he was sort of a ripoff of Jane. But he had nothing to his character but the annoying parts of Jane. That I'm going to work only for myself, and maybe it's because the show wasn't around long enough, because it was pretty good, so they canceled it. But but he was very much like, when I watched it, I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be Jane, and that's all he ever really was that Jane in like the first couple episodes, where very quickly, from Firefly had dimensions added to him quickly. He was still looking out for himself, but you got to see more to it. And I think also too, the more complicated your stories get, the more dimensions, the better it is to throw in single dimension characters, because it's going to take a lot of brain work from the people consuming it, and the problem is if it gets too complex, it will become too hard to follow. So sometimes you can throw in one-dimensional characters to sort of let people be able to rest their brain on his character when he comes into a scene. So it does take people's brain efforts to be able to read even fiction. So keep that in mind. I think it works to help relieve some of the mental work that they go through in consuming fiction.
I think there's also a comfort in it when you understand a character's job in a book is to be the comic relief or the sudden the sudden introduction of chaos, or this character's just straight evil. You know, when they show up, they're going to do evil things. There's a comfort in understanding what a character's about and what they're going to do. Don't get me wrong. I love a mysterious character. I love a backstory. I love discovering motivations and finding out that a character is deeper. But there's a comfort in knowing, like, that doesn't have to be every character.
Yeah, exactly.
So like when you know, Johnny Bad Guy, when Johnny Lieutenant Bad Guy shows up, you know, Lieutenant Bad Guy is going to do Lieutenant Bad Guy stuff. You know, he's not the big bad who's got layers and motivations. He's just Johnny Lieutenant Bad Guy, and you know he's going to do bad guy stuff because he's gonna break
the person's arm. He's gonna do it every time.
He's gonna do it every time.
Even when it's not related to him being a bad guy, he's at the grocery store paying for his groceries. He pays for them and then breaks the person's arm.
That's his thing.
Just because he's Johnny Bad Guy.
That's his bad quirk. Arm breaking.
Now, times where you can kind of look to just examples of where one-note characters make it worse. I would say most action, and especially comedic action movies of the 80s, had horrible villains, or their descendants in the early 90s. Very one-note villains, and sometimes it could work. Like the A-Team did a good job making it work, but a lot of the times it just, you know, it was bad. Like the villains, the most Steven Seagal.
Are you referring to the movie or the old television show?
The old television show.
Do you remember the bad guys in the old television show? I don't.
No, I don't, because they were so one-dimensional. They were all forgettable.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's kind of my point. So, but most of the villains in the 80s were all one-dimensional. Hell, most of the characters in the 80s were one-dimensional.
Pretty much. I'm reminded of Cobra Commander. I'm reminded of Cobra Commander.
Yeah, exactly.
Cobra! Just conquer. We want to conquer. We want to be in charge. We want to conquer. We want to destroy G.I. Joe.
Very important to go back, but do go back and watch all the old A-Team, many Real World Task. I still love that show. It'll make you feel better.
I've not watched that show in a long, long time. I wonder how it stands up.
Good. Like
does it really?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I laughed. I enjoyed myself. The same types of feelings I got. You know, I was under no delusion of what it was. You know, when I watched it.
I'm gonna have to try to find it. I don't know if I have access.
Your four main characters did great acting, and it was about them interacting through these quirky scenarios. Now, where it also doesn't work is if the main character, it's a strong thing about a main character, and they're one dimensional, and the plot, it's all about if it's all about the main character, and you make it, it doesn't matter what else you do. It's going to, I think personally, it will hurt the work. And
you can have the characters around the main character be one dimensional, but if you're going to focus a ton of time, attention, and storyline and plot on the main character, they better have layers.
Yeah, they better have layers. And on the other hand, is if you're reading through your work and you just don't feel like there's any subtext to it. There's nothing else to it but the story. Add some subtext in by adding multiple dimensions to some of the other characters, so it can bring up new conversations and have new scenes to give a little bit more of subtext to your work. So
I've said this before, but it bears repeating. It's something that I'm still learning and still grasping myself. I sometimes, as a receiver of media, as a consumer and an avatar, I sometimes don't always think about, like, I want to get lost in a world, in a story, in a plot, in the characters, and I will. What I'm not always considering is that a lot of times, especially with movies, a lot of times it's one writer. So there might be 20 characters, but it's really one voice. And when you think about it that way, what you have is one voice trying to share one message. Now, sometimes people try to write a story and they try to write a story. They don't write it with a point. And I don't think that's a good idea.
No.
I think that going to write a story, before you even write the story, I think that you should have a subtext. You should have, I want this story to convey this. Mm-hmm. And we've said this before. It could be something simple. It could be bad guys are bad, be a good person. It could be something way more complicated. It could be something on race relations. You take a look at Planet of the Apes. It's not a science fiction movie. It's a social experiment and a social treatise on race. That's what that movie is about, the original one. Mm-hmm. Think about when it was released and what the tensions were at that time. And a lot of science fiction does that and does it well. Mm-hmm. Like, you watch good science fiction. Good science fiction is not about anything that you're seeing on screen. It really isn't. Good science fiction has a second layer that it is trying to impress upon you. It's trying to get you to hear a message or think about something a different way. And sometimes the subtext is so complicated, you can't get it without reading an article where someone says, by the way, this is what the movie's actually about. Like, I know what you saw was androids and robots, but it's actually about abortion. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it sometimes it's very complicated, but I think it's important when you're going to write a story to start with the subtext. I think that you start there and then start building a story around what you want.
I think too,
as a singular voice to tell that, to express that. Now, obviously, there's a lot of shows out there that have a whole team of writers and a room full of writers creating the show. But when you talk about a book, when you talk about most movies, it's usually one, sometimes two writers. So if it's you, if that writer is you, understand that. Your tale should have a subtext, because if it's just a tale about a wandering warrior who's going to adventure out through the countryside and meet a bunch of people, become a band of party, and then kill a dragon, it's probably going to seem like a one-dimensional story, and we don't want you to do that.
And my suggestion with that too is you have an overarching story, and then at least for your major subplots, they should all have themes that somehow connect back to that. And the theme might vary a little bit but that way you can get more nuance in there. At least in my opinion, you can get more nuance in if you have themes for at least some of your subplots. But once again, it allows you to flesh out the story being told, but they can't be contradictory to the theme of the story. Or else you're going to take away from your own work. So yeah, you got to be careful with that too. But but the thing is, you don't have to achieve it through having all of your characters be complex. You can have you can choose the characters you want to be complex or you don't want to be complex. And really that's what makes, ultimately a good story is it's all about characters. I don't know how many times I think we've said that, but whether it's action driven or it's character driven, obviously, but it's really ultimately about the characters and their interactions. So sometimes make choices to make a character one dimensional because you're trying to service the theme that you're trying to achieve with your book. Just keep in mind what your goals are in writing a setting, whether it's for a book or a game, and make the elements you put in there serve the story. You choose that up. You're not controlled by the characters, and sometimes if you overdevelop a character, you become controlled by them. And if
I've had that happen.
If guard number 2 takes over your story, it could take it a completely different direction if it was meant for character.
Yeah. I've definitely had that happen with some of my projects where I totally intended a certain scene to occur, but then when it came time for that scene to happen, the characters were at a point where they would not do the things necessary to create the scene that I wanted to write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you just have to kill them at that point.
Yes, I did. I killed all 3 of them, 3 of the 5. Fine.
This is too complicated.
You won't do what I want you to do? Smite.
Okay. And now, Michael, what is the world-building task for today?
World-building task is take a character that you love and cut the depth right out of them. So this is something that you can do. Like, I've seen this in a number of different fictions where I'm going to immediately jump to multiple movies and multiple there's a bunch to it. So you've got Pitch Black. Pitch Black is the movie that put Vin Diesel on the map. Pitch Black is the movie that really springboarded his career. And Pitch Black brought us the character Richard B. Riddick, and Riddick is awesome. Richard B. Riddick is the character that Vin Diesel plays in that story, and that story is very much your stranded group of different characters that all have to come together to survive an extraordinary scenario. Right?
It was an alien.
Yes, it was aliens. It was a classic. Science fiction trope movie. But his character really stood out. Meant to stand out.
Made it.
But stood out more so than I think they expected or intended. And they made a sequel out of it. I like the sequel, but only parts of it. I do not like some of the things they did with the sequel. They tried to take a character that we loved because they were an anti-hero and make him a hero. They took the Punisher and tried to turn him into the Kwisatz Haderach. And I'm like, that's wrong. This is everything they did in the second movie with that character is not what was meant for that character. But then when they got to the third movie, which is simply called, so the first movie's Pitch Black. Then there was an animated little mini movie called Dark Fury. They also did a video game, which was a prequel to Pitch Black called The Chronicles of Butcher Bay, which was fantastic. I recommend you play it if you haven't. There's also another video game called Dark Athena. I did not play Dark Athena. Then you have so Pitch Black, The Chronicles of Riddick, which is the second movie. And then you have the movie that's just called Riddick, which is the third. In the third movie, they stripped a lot of the layers that they had created in the second movie that did not help make the character better. It created layers, it added to the character, but it took away, adding those things took away the things that we liked. So when they went to the third movie, they opened up with some of that stuff and then stripped it all away by putting the character in an environment that was almost identical to the first movie. And they reminded us why we fell in love with the character in the first place.
Awesome.
And that is a case where you can totally do this. You can take a character that you have spent a lot of stuff on, pick something that the character is passionate about or something that's really important to integral of the character and just choose that one thing. Remove all the other things. My vote is not just strip these things away. My vote is write a one-page thing about maybe an adventure, a story, a scene with this character with all the other things stripped away. Just that one thing that defines them, that one thing that makes them one-dimensional. That's my real world task.
Wow,
or world
like a character that they love and then just change it. Oh my goodness.
Not change it. Boil it to its purity.
Yeah. Ooh.
I don't think you're changing it.
Disgusting.
I think you're boiling it to its purity.
Okay.
What's the real world task?
The real world task is identify a way that you know you're not doing something good in. And I said that really poorly. Identify a problem you have. Identify a problem you have. I can speak well. And spend time figuring out what's one easy thing I can start doing to get better. You know, if you don't move enough, let's say you play video games, can you come up with a routine? Once an hour, you get up and just kind of move really hard for like just 5 or 10 minutes. You know, just like walk around the house, maybe do some house cleaning, whatever it is, something where you just move. Like one thing that you can do to improve yourself in an area that you know you're lacking in. And I don't have to tell you what they are. And,
I want to read what you wrote here because I think what you wrote here expresses it better than you're doing. It says, identify one way you need to take better care of yourself. And then it says, do one thing every day to get one step closer to achieving that betterment.
Yes,
I think that's good.
That's boiled down. So I guess that kind of goes back to
that's the one-dimensional
of the episode. Almost like I had planned it that way.
It's almost like were you stringing me along and waiting for me to interrupt you with your own words? Is that what you wanted to get your words out of my mouth? Is that what you were trying to do?
I'll never comment on that.
Fair enough. If you're going to be doing any Amazon shopping, please go through our portal. It helps the show, www.garduel.com/Amazon. It will take you straight to Amazon. It's not going to change your prices, just going to help the show get a kickback and, helps us out to, continue to give you great content. And Jeff, what is the closed Facebook page?
It is Facebook.com/group/Undercroft.
And if you do just a search for Undercroft, you'll find this Fantasy World Builders Undercroft. You'll find such a great collection of really nice people who are working on projects just like yours.
Asking questions, helping each other.
A lot of great resources, just really fun stuff, fun people. Guys, thank you so much for contributing to the page. I really appreciate seeing the content you guys put up. I learn stuff from you guys. Like, I really do. You guys post stuff. I click on them. I go and I read the stuff. Like, I really like the stuff you guys add to the page. So thank you all for your contributions.
All right, folks. We will see you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.